Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana News Desk. Bloomington's Wheeler Mission for Women closed its doors this week, leaving the city without a low-barrier shelter for only women.
I did not realize how many females were homeless till I got here. And I was very surprised at the number.
Wheeler has been working the past month on relocating their guests. A quarter of Indiana's schools are listed as rural, and statistics show rural kids are far less likely to complete college than those from urban areas.
I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. I went in blind, I had no resources.
Schools such as Indiana University and Ivy Tech have programs in place to help make the transition smoother. And the IU football team kicks off a new season this weekend with a lot of new faces on both sides of the ball. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana News Desk. Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Bloomington's Wheeler Shelter for Women closed its doors today, leaving the city without a low-barrier shelter dedicated solely to women. Our Benta Boutier spoke with a pair of women who were staying at the shelter about what their options are now.
The bunks at the Wheeler Women's Shelter in Bloomington has capacity to shelter 40 women, but are now empty. Flo Hepburn and Kelly Irvin sit in the shelter's common room. They're both leaving this week to stay with family members temporarily. Hepburn stayed at Wheeler since April. She'll live with her sister in Bloomington while she waits on a call for an open apartment. She's on supplemental security income, so what she can afford is limited.
I started applying before I got to Wheeler, to some of these places. But the waiting list are 6 months to up to a year and a half. And that's ridiculous, to be honest.
To her, the shelter's closure is significant because she didn't feel safe sheltering with men.
I just don't trust men, period. I have got to really know them before I can trust them.
Irvin moved to Wheeler in early July after a double hernia surgery that prevented her from working.
I did not realize how many females were homeless till I got here. And I was very surprised at the number. But in our economic days now, I mean, price of rent, price of groceries, price of, everything. It's hard to survive.
She'll stay with family members down south, and the plan's to help her find a place of her own by October. She's waiting on Social Security disability income to be approved.
We're looking at income-based housing, senior, 60 and above housing.
She says finding options has been a struggle. She's grateful for the case management and health care access she received at Wheeler.
The medical team that came here got me a nebulizer, so I can do my own breathing treatments now and take care of that aspect, where before, on my health insurance, I couldn't get one.
Irvin and Hepburn are both worried about how far some women staying at Wheeler have to travel to relocate. Director of Community Engagement Services at Wheeler, Dana Jones, says they've been focused for the last month on relocating their guests.
And as we've been working with them to try to assure them that the next steps is positive and we can move them on to the next area. And so right now we've been very fortunate with being able to relocate a lot of our guests.
In 2020, the Wheeler Women's Shelter closed for several months because of a lack of money. But the City of Bloomington and United Way provided funds for it to reopen. Wheeler Mission's 2020 tax filing states its total revenue that year was $23 million. The year before, its total revenue was $28 million. The closure now comes as Bloomington Wheeler works on strategic plans, and it didn't have the resources to continue sheltering women. Jones says operations were more expensive during the pandemic.
From social distancing to masking to all the protocols of making sure people were remaining safe in congregate sheltering during that pandemic. So it really stretched us about as far as we could get.
He says from November 2020 to this month, they sheltered nearly 1,400 men, about 4 times the number of women, which is something they took into consideration.
We're going to turn around and spend a lot of effort in creating and deepening our programs for men, by deepening our case management availability, by deepening our resources, our long-term programs, so that we'll see success within those programs.
Forrest Gilmore with Beacon Inc. says its overnight shelter for men and women, Friends Place, is adding more beds for women and is ready to shelter as many as possible.
We now are the only emergency shelter for women in our county, and we take that challenge and need with a lot of seriousness. It's a big responsibility.
Beacon has considered shifting its overnight services completely to women and LGBTQ guests and is monitoring bed need closely.
We're still playing that idea out and really exploring that option. I think demand is going to determine to a big degree what we see and what we need to do as a community.
Neither Hepburn or Irvin know where they would be without the Wheeler Women's Shelter. Both say they want to see more affordable housing and shelter options created. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Benta Boutier.
Wheeler says it has no plans as of now on what to do with the building that's housed the women's shelter. After spending more than a week in Maui searching for wildfire victims, Indiana Task Force 1 has returned back to Indianapolis. What they saw left a lasting impression. Sarah Molina has this report.
Resilient. That's the word Indiana Task Force 1 leader Jay Settergren used to describe the people of Maui, who have slowly been piecing their lives back together from the deadly fires for about 3 weeks now. Settergren's been a firefighter for 34 years, but he says he had never seen anything like it.
It was just a very fast, intense moving fire. So it was shocking. Actually, the video that you see on the news doesn't do it justice. It really completely burned everything out. There's just nothing left.
The Hoosier Heroes were deployed with 5 other task forces from different states, given the mission of searching the aftermath for missing loved ones. Settergren prepared his team as best as he could, but he knew it would be physically and mentally stressful. Although the Islanders themselves are still grieving, they were able to give task force members some comfort and a lot of inspiration.
I look at it a lot like I do the Hoosiers. There were a lot of people there that showed up to help each other. And even though they were all suffering in some kind of way with some particular loss tied to this fire, they didn't give up.
At least 115 people died and 2,000 structures were destroyed, making this the deadliest fire in the U.S. in over a century. As Hawaiian natives try to return to a sense of normalcy, all members of the task force have returned home for some much-needed rest. But Settergren says their hearts are still with the people of Maui. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Sarah Molina.
Team members were met with immense support from people all over Indiana as they returned home Monday, preparing to go back to work here in the Hoosier State. Indiana has lost more than 260 acres of wetlands since lawmakers removed protections for most of them in 2021. That's according to state data compiled by wetland advocates. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports that means fewer acres that protect wildlife, reduce flooding, filter water, and store carbon emissions.
Since the law took effect, the state has issued permits to build on nearly 350 acres of wetlands in the state, and only a quarter of those will have to be rebuilt elsewhere. Those lost wetlands could store up to about 390 million gallons of water, which means those areas will now be more susceptible to flooding.
So our flood response teams, our hazard mitigation teams, the stormwater managers in our cities and counties are all going to have to pick up the loss of that water storage.
And that could lead to higher water bills for residents. This week, the Environmental Protection Agency removed significant federal protections for wetlands as a result of a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Frank says the data doesn't show where each wetland loss occurred, but there are some clues based on the State Department of Natural Resources program to replace wetlands.
It appears that wetland loss is happening fastest in central Indiana, in the Upper White River watershed.
Without state protections to fill in the gap, it's likely Indiana will lose even more wetlands in the future. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
The Indiana Department of Environmental Management declined an interview and did not provide a statement in time for this story. Well, we're joined now by Callie Lichter for more headlines from around the state. Hello, Callie.
Hi, Joe. Monroe County officials want to further research the former Thompson property as a potential site for a new county jail. Lucas Gonzalez has the story.
The county commissioners, council members, and sheriff are one step closer to deciding where to put a new jail. At a Tuesday meeting, they all seemed to agree that the facility should be built at the Thompson site. Several at the meeting, including Deputy Prosecutor April Wilson, said they want to see the jail close to the courts and other services.
Separation of courts, attorney offices, probation, or any place where a defendant is required to report creates new barriers to participation.
Sheriff Ruben Marte supports building the jail at the county-owned site, but he also wants the county council to invest in staffing and treatment at the current facility before a new one is built.
At what point do we have to turn away a program knowing that it could be helpful because we don't have the space?
Wendy Goodlett, the CEO of Monroe County Habitat for Humanity, says she's concerned that building a jail at the Thompson site would negatively impact residents of a nearby income-restricted development.
We would not be having this conversation if the county-owned land was adjacent to a wealthy neighborhood. I implore you to include all neighbors of the Thompson property as part of the discussion before you make a decision.
The county agreed to survey those residents before master planning begins. Additional steps will include getting appraisals and completing geotechnical research on the site. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Lucas Gonzalez.
Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton wants new civilian police department employees to respond to more 911 calls as the department grapples with a staffing shortage. His plan is to use money from the department's budget to hire 5 community service specialists to respond to calls such as welfare checks and noise complaints.
We're just expanding what we're doing with our community service specialists and using that unspent money to have them respond to minor calls that we have in the downtown area.
Community service specialists are non-sworn department employees who respond to low-risk calls. They can take case reports but cannot carry firearms or make arrests. Dekoff says they may temporarily respond to welfare checks and other low-risk calls, but he doesn't plan to have them investigate noise complaints. The local Fraternal Order of Police Union opposes the idea.
It's not necessarily that the civilian aspect of it. I mean, we think that's very risky and there's some danger involved with what he's proposed. But it really is taking money from unused or unfilled police positions right now.
Dekoff says he understands the union's concerns, but believes the plan can work. He says the potential risk of 911 calls will be determined on an individual basis. Schools across the state will receive nearly $30 million this year to spend on safety measures through the Secured School Safety Grant. The grant provides matching funds up to $100,000 to schools. This year, more than 450 schools submitted safety projects. The largest spending category is for school resource officers and law enforcement officers. More than $19 million will go towards placing SROs and LEOs in schools. The 2 lowest spending categories were bullying prevention and post-incident counseling services. The new Hank's Pizza Mac location is now temporarily closed after being open for 1 day. Hank's took over the former Avers Public House August 10th and opened August 25th. The general managers who had previously worked for Avers said they wanted to provide customers with great food and were unable to do so because they did not have the resources to succeed. They walked off the job the first day and closed the restaurant. The restaurant, located on College Mall Road, is closed until further notice. Indiana Republican Senator Chip Perfect announced Wednesday he will resign from his seat next month, less than a year into his 4-year term. In a statement, Perfect says he's resigning for business, family, and personal obligations. The legislature is president and CEO of Perfect North Slopes, a skiing resort in southeastern Indiana. A private Republican caucus will choose a replacement soon to serve out the remainder of Perfect's term. Indiana University in Bloomington set an enrollment record for the 3rd straight year this fall with 47,527 students. That includes 9,550 incoming freshmen and more than 10,000 graduate students. This year is the most diverse in IU's history, with about 32% being students of color. And Joe, while Bloomington's campus is blooming, most of the regional IU campuses have declined in enrollment.
All right, Callie, thank you very much. Coming up next on Indiana News Desk. Only 18% of Hoosiers from rural high schools have graduated college, and schools are looking at ways to raise that number. And Pantry 279 in Ellettsville is moving into a new home, tripling its size and allowing for more office space and a return to indoor shopping. These stories and more right here on Indiana News Desk.
Now streaming on the PBS app, the definitive collection of documentaries from award-winning filmmaker Ken Burns.
Hemingway, the man, is much more interesting than the myth.
It is a story that Americans have to reckon with.
He's got my job, I'm the town.
Discover over 40 groundbreaking films that bring our history to life. Stream the Ken Burns collection now with Passport on the PBS app.
We're running out of time.
Oh, God! I already feel so empowered.
We could just live happily ever after, but that would be no fun at all.
Welcome back to Indiana News Desk. Pantry 279 moved into its new location at the Smith Pike Plaza Tuesday. As Clayton Baumgarth reports, the new 4,000 square foot storefront is 3 times the previous location at Trinity Lutheran Church.
Executive Director Cindy Chavez says the new location allows more room for office space and new products.
We have a clothing and households area, which we've never had before. We have a repack room where people can just repack. We have a break room. We've never had one of those before either.
Chavez also says people are excited about the move back to indoor shopping. With the new location, though, the pantry won't be offering a drive-through option.
But people who just don't want to get out of their car, they can stay in the car, park at the parking lot, call us and say, hey, I'm in parking space, whatever, blue car. We'll come out and bring you a pre-packed box.
The move comes after struggling to find a landlord willing to rent to them and getting proper permits approved by the Monroe County government.
It was not easy at all. Nobody wanted to rent to us. They said we served too many people.
Overall, Chavez is excited and nervous for the new location.
It's a big step. I mean, we go from no rent to rent. We go from almost no bills to bills, and it's bigger. I mean, there's a huge amount of space we now have to fill with food.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
The pantry will be open for regular distribution September 5th. A quarter of Indiana K-12 schools are rural. These students are less likely to enroll in and complete college. Higher education reporter Aubrey Wright looks into one rural student who earned his college degree at Indiana University and what others might experience.
Logan Gingrich is sending out art therapy books for veterans. He's worked at Indiana University's Center for Rural Engagement since his senior year at IU.
We have a book, and so we packaged it up with an art kit.
After a professor noticed his passion for rural healthcare, he began volunteering at wellness fairs. Now he works for the center's Creative Arts for Vets program. It's a mental health project for military veterans and service members.
It talks about their experiences, like what their experiences might have been, like when they were in active duty, and they were deployed.
Gingrich is from Odin, Indiana, a small town in Davies County. Maybe known best for its meat locker, his graduating class had about 69 people. He says he knew everyone.
I knew them by their first and last name, I knew their parents, I knew their dogs, like I knew everything about them.
Gingrich was valedictorian at North Davies High School in 2018. He had a 4.0 GPA and was set for the pre-med track at Indiana University. But no one he knew had a college degree. He says people in Odin became farmers, or maybe teachers. He learned how to go through college all on his own.
I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. I went in blind, I had no resources.
Gingrich earned his college degree in 2022, and now he's a graduate student with the University of Florida. Like many other students from rural areas, it wasn't always easy getting here. In Indiana, students from rural schools have lower college enrollment rates than suburban and urban students, even when they do the same or better in high school. Only 18% of Hoosiers in rural areas have completed college. This is a national trend.
The reality is that rural students are not attaining at the same rate, attaining a degree at the same rate that the general population is or that urban population is.
Courtney Brown is Vice President of Impact and Planning at the Lumina Foundation. She says rural students tend to be low income or the first in their family to go to college. Some need more help than scholarships can provide.
Poverty is an incredible factor. So, even if they get grants that help pay their tuition, they still need money to actually get to a campus, to drive to a campus. So that's gas money. They may need to live somewhere else. They don't have money for that.
Ivy Tech is Indiana's community college system. The Bloomington campus serves 8 counties. Some students travel more than 25 miles to get to class. The college is working on fixing problems rural students face. That might look like providing busing and laptops, or tailoring workforce programs to local communities.
I think what's really unique and special about our system is that we have been so flexible and nimble in trying to adjust and adapt to the various needs that our communities do have.
Brown said mentorship and support for rural high schoolers could lead to better enrollment numbers. Ivy Tech and IU's Center for Rural Engagement works in K-12 schools to show students that higher education is possible. IU collaborates with rural schools to improve outcomes for teachers and students.
We really think a lot of those enrichment programs and partnership programs are going to help Hoosier students really see the possibilities that they can access through post-secondary education.
Thompson says IU should continue outreach to rural students to best represent all of Indiana. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Aubrey Wright.
After a month of fall practice, it's finally game week for the Indiana football team. And as Pat Bean reports, the Hoosiers will be tested right out of the gate.
Effort has never been an issue for Tom Allen's teams in his first 6 seasons at Indiana, but talent and injuries have been. And when the Hoosiers open the 2023 season Saturday, there'll again be plenty of new faces on both sides of the ball. Not only that, but they'll be facing third-ranked Ohio State, a team IU hasn't beaten since 1987.
I'm excited for that, and gets a chance to get a lot of questions answered and a chance to be able to go against the very, very best from week 1 on. So I'm excited for our football team, and we will be ready.
One of the big questions is who will start at quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, who saw limited action last season, or Tennessee transfer Taven Jackson, the younger brother of former IU basketball star Trace Jackson Davis. The decision has been made for a while. Allen just won't announce it until just before Saturday's season opener. But whichever redshirt freshman gets the nod, Allen doesn't want him looking over his shoulder.
I just want him to be confident and play with decisive decision-making, and you try schematically to help in that regard. You want to make sure you set them up to have the best success possible.
The receiving core could be a strength for the Hoosiers, with veterans Cam Camper and Donovan McCauley and Clemson transfer E.J. Williams leading the way. Allen says if McCauley, who played quarterback last season, plays with confidence, he can be an elite receiver.
When that ball is in the air, it is your ball. I don't care who we're playing against. I don't care what coverage you're playing. I don't care about anything else. When that ball is anywhere near you, you come down with it.
IU will be doing whatever it can to get the ball in the hands of sophomore Jalen Lucas, who rushed for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns last season. He also averaged 28.1 yards as a kick returner, earning several first-team All-American nods.
What can we do to create space touches for J. Lou? How can we make sure that he's getting the right, not only he's getting the ball, but when he does possess the ball, it's in the right spot so he can be at his best.
The defense will have an almost entirely new look, bolstered by the addition of several starters from the transfer portal. That includes defensive lineman Andre Carter and Philip Bildy, and defensive backs Kobe Minor and Jameer Johnson. Allen is hoping to see improvement from a unit that ranked last or near the bottom in the Big Ten in several defensive categories last year. They'll all be tested in the opener by a team that has beaten the Hoosiers by a combined score of 110-21 the last 2 seasons. But Allen wouldn't have it any other way.
I think it really accelerates your growth. I really do. I think, and maybe there's going to be some growing pains through all that. I get that. We get that. But I think there's nothing like being tested by the very, very best.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Pat Bean.
That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.